Free kick to you off the start here, mate. One Nation and Pauline. We talked to her last week, right? I love that you're putting the ball on the tee. You're telling people what some of the ideas are, telling people up front, hey, there are people to vote for who agree with many of the ideas that are discussed on things like this program, like about the tax situation. And now, let's not have the excise tax on beer, on wine, on spirits when you buy it at the pub.
I promised you this last week, Paul. I said the hospitality industry was in for a win, but more so the public. And the big thing here is we're seeing people, the numbers dwindle within our pubs, clubs, restaurants and RSLs, the surf clubs out there. And why is that? Because, mate, if you go to the pub these days, everybody who buys a schooner of beer these days, unless you're up in the NT, only buy middies or small little pots because it's too bloody hot up there. But you'll pay $12 to $14 for a schooner. And this is why less and less people are going to pubs. It's even more if you want to buy a rum and coke, as you've been banging on about for ages with those bottles that you buy through the drive-through. But the government isn't going to take much of a haircut here, but this will certainly inspire people to get back out there, mate. I actually want people off dating apps. I want them to go to the pub and meet people the old original way.
Yes.
It's a safer environment for young people to go. They can have a beer. They can, they've got responsible service of alcohol in pubs and clubs. They've got security cameras. They've got entertainment. I want to see bands back in pubs. But the only way you're going to do that is if you make it cheap enough for people to go back to the pub. And I also want to make it more encouraging, and so does the One Nation Party, for people to drink alcohol instead of take drugs. We've gone so far now where it's cheaper to go and buy an ecstasy tablet than what it is to go and have a pint of beer. It's just outrageous. So this is something we've promised voters. If we hold that balance of power after this next election, we're going to scrap the tax on alcohol in venues across the country.
I love it. Linda, what could possibly be the problem here?
I mean, look, he's just got to explain what else he's going to cut to pay for it and what the cost is. But, that would be far too responsible.
We've already made those statements. There's $90 billion worth of overspending from Labor, Linda, that we're just going to take a haircut to, and we'll make sure that we give that money back to people.
On education, is that what you're going to cut?
Indigenous groups where there's a... We've seen the wasted money in duplication in Indigenous groups across the country. We certainly don't want to take away from health. That's your scare campaign against the LNP, so don't try and put that back onto us. Well, no, there's already duplication. So we've got states looking after Indigenous, and Labor's duplicated that to the tune of around $40 billion a year. And I think we'll talk more about that as the show goes on.
He's already said that Aussie Doge, there's plenty there. There's billions anyway. But your thoughts about the idea of...
Linda, I'm happy to send you our policies.
There you go. 63% of a bottle of Bundy is tax, right? I banged on about this in great lengthy detail, right, which is that essentially the actual only reason that the federal government is in a surplus, and people say, oh, it's because of the mining industry. Yes, absolutely. But the actual difference between almost a surplus and a surplus are vice taxes. Now, to me, we all understand clipping the ticket, this is part of what government does. But surely we've lost the plot when a bottle of rum is 63% tax, Linda.
Well, look, I don't know exactly what the tax is on a bottle of rum, Paul, but I do know that the fact is that when you don't have taxes that cover the cost of the healthcare for some of these kinds of items, then it's very, very hard to pay for them. And Australia does want to prevent the degradation of Medicare. The Labor government does want to protect Medicare. They do want to protect those services, and they do want to protect the funding and taxation stream.
We'll take it from the foreign aid budget. That's a simple one. That'll save us $6 billion. This is only going to cost one, and I think every viewer out there would be very happy to see the foreign aid budget cut, because it's not going to good causes. We've seen that. $600 million from your mob to go and put a football stadium up in the PNG region. What good's that to the Australian people? I think I'd rather cheaper beer than a stadium in PNG.
Regional security.
But okay, here's
football brings on security. Good on you.
Yeah, but isn't this the issue though, Linda, where any government, right? Any government understands that 10 million for this and 50 million for that and 100. There's all these reasons why you make the choices, right? But once it becomes a giant pot of money, as it was when Labor was in opposition, you're able to say, oh, $1 trillion worth of debt. Well, everyone knows that a massive chunk of that was all of the assistance that was given to people during a pandemic when they couldn't leave the house, right? Oh, but the line just becomes $1 trillion worth of debt. So this is the reality of politics, isn't it? When you've done this in local council as well, that it's like, yeah, okay, you can sit there and have a programmatic conversation, but if people's perception is, I've gone backwards, but you've gone forward, and you've gone forward because you haven't pulled your head in, doesn't that become a problem for Labor?
Look, I think what voters expect, Paul, is going into an election with less than 100 days until the federal election, that parties will cost their policies and they'll be really transparent about what they will continue and what they won't. Now, James has just been transparent tonight. He said he'd cut foreign aid. That's new news to me. Keen to understand how much and what from. I think it is important that Australians understand what political parties are planning to do, not just the, spicy good news. They've also got to understand where the cuts will come from. And unfortunately, it is the case right now that the opposition, particularly Peter Dutton, has not done that. He's not outlined the cuts he's going to make to pay for the nuclear power program. He's not outlined the cuts he's going to make in order to fund a huge number of the promises that he's already made. And that's just not telling the truth to the Australian people.